Hey guys, this is your Week 8 overview. Now, before we get started, let me go ahead and handle a couple of quick housekeeping issues. Now, a couple of you have noticed that some of the overviews up until this point have been recycled. Well, the truth of the matter is, if they are just overviews and they don't really have anything that is specific, then I have used some of the ones from from last semester. For example, if I'm just basically going over some of the things that you're going to be doing this week, then I have used ones from previous semesters as opposed to recording other ones. This week I'm actually going to be recording a new one because I do have a couple of questions from some of you as well as some things that I want to specifically deal with. So if you do have questions, if you do have things that you would like me to address specifically, don't feel hesitant to get in touch with me because I am more than happy to address them with you. Okay, a couple of things to get started with in the housekeeping area. I'm a little bit behind on the discussion posts. I'm hoping to get these for the last discussion post squared away hopefully by Monday or Tuesday. That is top priority. I know you have the third discussion post coming up. Coming up on the 14th. The 14th. So that's coming down the pipe, and then next week you have your second test. So just kind of make sure that you have those things on your calendar, that you know that that's coming. A couple of things that I wanted to address. I did have a question about this. As far as the discussion posts are concerned, I want you again to have a conversation with me. There were questions about whether I needed you to write something out, whether I wanted you to read a script, something like this. That's really not the purpose of these discussion posts. These are simulating classroom discussion. Frankly, it's one of the downsides, one of the weaknesses, I would say, of an online class like this. You don't get a whole lot of interaction, and I don't get to get a feel for what you guys know as students. The other thing about it is when we do comprehensive exams, when we later on work with students on things like thesis projects or media projects, your final ones, one of the things that we have noticed is that there are weaknesses sometimes, not in the students' writings per se, where students can spend a prolonged period of time kind of cobbling together their words and making sure that everything is really tight, but in how they can actually verbally present their ideas. So in order to try and address these issues, I, as one of the professors, as well as several others, have instituted these video discussion posts. I want you to get some practice in presenting your ideas in a cogent, concise manner. So that's kind of the idea behind these discussion posts. It's a way of giving you guys who are not sitting in a classroom with us the opportunity to get your thoughts together and present them in a verbal manner, even though that is not really something that you may get a lot of chance to practice on an online class. So have a conversation with me. Talk to me about this topic. But one of the things that you need to be cognizant of is how important it is to stay on topic and stay clear and concise in your explanations. Okay? So when you get into thesis discussions, when you are presenting information for your media projects, or when you're discussing things for comps or something later on, these are all things that will benefit you in this program. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to practice that. Okay, so moving on from there, wanted to discuss. There were some questions about the tests. Now, I'm going to be talking about this a little bit next week, but I want to talk about it a little bit here. Circling back on some feedback I gave about the tests previously, The biggest concern that we had with some of the tests was providing both an exhaustive answer as well as a, how can I say this, a concise answer. Now, what I mean by this is generally whenever I am grading your test questions, I have certain key points that I'm looking for you to discuss, the things that are intrinsic to the topic. So, when I say discuss or, describe and then critically analyze the importance of the Zenger trial, well, then I'm going to be looking for you to give me some historic background, but then also to analyze the trial itself as far as how it impacted, say, media legal tradition. So really pay attention to the questions that I ask, and then think about not only what was happening then, but then also if I'm asking for how this event has kind of resonated or created change that lasts even into today, make some connections. It's not about just going into the book and pulling out specific things. If given enough time, anyone can do this, but in these discussions or these answers, I really want to see that you can make connections more than just that you can try and run into the book as quickly as possible and grab a few key terms. So, in an ideal sense, you probably should only minimally be going into the book to try and find the answers to these questions. Now, that being said, I am not under any illusions that you guys are not going into the book while you are taking these tests. I don't believe that for a second. So I would say that I don't think you guys will have the ability to really dig deep into the book to answer all of these questions. Or at very least, you probably will not be able to give as deep of an answer as I'm expecting if you're trying to go and find the answer to this question within the book during the testing period. You really should know something about these topics before you take the test, and then maybe check a source or two during the test if that's what you're doing. Okay. All right. I think that answers the questions that I've gotten this week. So let me go ahead and jump into what you're going to learn this week. Okay. All right. So chapters 13, chapters 14, these are the things in your book that you're going to be touching on. We're jumping into magazines and advertising. This is huge in the history of American media, and I know I'm a little bit long, so I'm going to make this very quick. Magazines were a game changer in that they changed the way that information was packaged and some of the expectations associated with information. We also see a rise in information vehicles targeting females in particular. So things like Harper's Magazine. My mind is going blank here. Reader's Digest later on. These are all things that were introduced and that targeted females across the country. They also started creating what is called mass culture. What I mean by mass culture is instead of there being tiny little enclaves of culture throughout the nation, where essentially maybe geographically separate entities develop their own culture, their own identity, their own style, language, ideas of food and music. As magazines began to be shared, be published, and then mailed all over the country, all of a sudden we started seeing a coalition. I'm getting over it too fast for myself. We start seeing culture becoming uniform across vast regions of the United States. So pay attention to this as you're watching my full overviews as well as reading through the books. I've given you a rundown or a link to the history of Harper's Magazine. Harper's was one of the most important magazines of the time, as well as a history of P.T. Barnum, who is a name you probably know. The Greatest Showman is a movie that came out. Here's a quick hint. That movie was almost entirely fiction. It was fictitious, probably 95%. But P.T. Barnum was a fascinating guy, and was really a product of the time. So I've given you a link to Getting to Know P.T. Barnum. Very fascinating. So pay attention to individuals and some of the main key figures within this time period, as well as some of the major entities. Like I said, there's Harper's Magazine, which is one of the major magazines, as well as several others. If you have any questions, concerns, or comments, please let me know. You should also be paying attention to concepts like yellow journalism, or sometimes called jazz journalism. This is a big topic. Okay, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, let me know. I'd be more than happy to answer them. I know I've gone way over time on this, but I wanted to give you that housekeeping stuff at the beginning. All right, good luck, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye.